we're going to see exactly how a defeated, broken king completely transformed his shattered nation into an absolute, unbreakable strategic machine. Now, we often hear all these myths and legends about Alfred the Great, but today, we're tossing the folklore out the window. Instead, we're going to look at the actual administrative and military blueprint he used to re-engineer a whole society and save England from total annihilation. Think of this as the ultimate historical case study in crisis management. So our story starts at absolute rock bottom. It's the winter of 878. King Alfred is literally forced into hiding in these desolate, freezing marshlands after a massive surprise Viking attack led by Guthrum. It was a bitter, devastating humiliation that totally exposed how weak his kingdom's defenses really were. Now, he eventually rallied his men and he did defeat Guthrum at the Battle of Edington. But he made a vow, the one you're seeing right here, that no king of Wessex would ever again be humiliated like that. He absolutely refused to be caught off guard again, and the rest of his entire life became this obsessive mission to make sure of it. All right, moving into Section 1, Kingdom on the Brink and his Fortress Blueprint. To actually achieve this goal, Alfred had to solve a massive structural problem. The core issue was simple, but it was deadly. He was dealing with the sheer speed and mobility of Viking hit-and-run tactics, enabled by those lightning-fast longships, and he was matching that up against a really slow-moving, agrarian English society that didn't even have a standing army. So his first major fix was a total logistical masterstroke. The old military system was just fatally slow. I mean, imagine trying to fight a highly mobile war with guys who are literally holding farm tools and who are incredibly reluctant to leave their crops unattended. Long campaigns were just practically impossible. So Alfred radically solved this by splitting his military right down the middle into two rotating contingents. One half became this rapid response standing cavalry, ready to ride out at a moment's notice. The other half, they stayed home to tend the farms and keep the economy from collapsing. This meant his forces could actually campaign for months without starving the realm. It's really an early masterclass in supply chain logistics. But here's the thing, a mobile army still needs a shield, right? And that brings us to this incredibly critical number, 20 miles. Alfred engineered this sprawling kingdom-wide network of over 30 fortresses, which the Anglo-Saxons called Burhs. Think of this as an Iron Age emergency response radius. He positioned these forts so strategically along coastlines, rivers, key roads, that absolutely no subject was ever more than a single day's march from safety. So about 20 miles. When the Vikings invaded, the people didn't panic. They just packed up their grain, their cattle, their valuables, and took refuge behind high walls and deep ditches. It completely deprived the raiders of their easy plunder. Now, what's really fascinating here is the sheer mathematical precision behind these walls. We actually have a surviving 10th century document called the Burhs, and it shows us the exact math. Notice how a massive hub like Winchester, where the king held court, required exactly 2,400 soldiers to man the walls. But then a minor burh, like Ling, needed just 100. Every single inch of wall, every ditch, and every gate was meticulously accounted for. No guesswork at all. To really put that into perspective, look at the staggering scale of this operation. To man all these burhs simultaneously required 27,000 soldiers. That mobilized force was a massive 20%, literally 1/5 of the entire adult male population of Wessex, dedicated solely to defense at any given time. This wasn't just some basic military draft. It was a total whole-of-society mobilization. He created an integrated, mutually supporting defense system unlike anything England had ever seen before. But hey, walls alone don't run a state, do they? Let's jump to Section 2, the literacy revolution and educating Wessex. Alfred realized super early on that a robust fortress kingdom actually required a highly educated ruling class to function properly. The huge problem was that Wessex's centers of learning had been repeatedly sacked by Vikings for years, and literacy was virtually wiped out. In fact, Alfred himself admitted he knew almost no one south of the Thames who could even read a simple letter in Latin. So what does he do? He launches this massive, cascading 3-step educational initiative. First, and just imagine being a hardened, grizzled old warrior hearing this, he threatened his nobles with losing their jobs if they didn't go to school and learn to read and write in English. Second, he brought in brilliant scholars from all over Europe to help restore Latin. And third, he personally led a grand project to translate great works of history and philosophy into English, setting up a school right there at the royal court. Now, you might be wondering, why did a warlord care so much about books? Well, it wasn't about poetry or, idle philosophy. It was about pure, ruthless efficiency. Literacy had a hard, practical edge for Alfred.
It meant his judges could actually understand and uphold complex written laws. It meant his ealdormen could correspond with him, and his generals could flawlessly execute highly detailed written military orders across vast distances. He wasn't just teaching them to read for the fun of it, he was building a highly sophisticated government machine.
Okay, so with a secure, literate, and capable administration finally in place, Alfred starts looking outward. Let's look at Section 3, Uniting the Realm Through the Mercian Alliance. He knew that to make his new system survive, he had to stabilize his frontiers, particularly up to the north. Right on his northern border was the neighboring kingdom of Mercia, which was in desperate need of a protector from the Danes. So Alfred forged a crucial partnership there, and honestly, you've got to admire his incredible political savvy here. He allied with a staunchly anti-Viking nobleman named Ethelred. But rather than acting like some conquering tyrant, Alfred bought his loyalty with respect. He brought him in as a vassal, granting him the really esteemed title Lord of the Mercians. This powerful alliance was physically sealed when Ethelred married Alfred's incredibly formidable daughter, Ethelflaed, and to completely cement that trust, Alfred just handed Ethelred control of London and its newly rebuilt Roman walls in 886. So by the end of the 880s, Alfred's newly designed state was this administrative marvel. But, as we know, a machine is only as good as its performance under extreme pressure. Let's get into Section 4, the ultimate Viking test as Hastin invades. This was the massive crisis that crashed onto English shores in the year 892. The fragile peace was violently shattered by a feared veteran raider named Hastin. He was fleeing a famine over in Francia, and Hastin didn't just bring some small raiding party. No, he launched a massive two-pronged invasion with over 330 ships. And here is the truly terrifying part for the English. His warriors brought their wives and children with them. That completely raised the stakes. This wasn't a hit and run anymore. They intended to conquer, settle down, and rule Wessex permanently. This was a total existential threat. But watch how perfectly Alfred's system responds. Just follow the momentum on this timeline. Rather than reacting slowly and retreating to the muddy marshes like in the battle days, his highly mobile forces rapidly intercepted the threat. His son Edward cornered and slaughtered the Vikings at Farnham, seizing all their plunder. Then, his son-in-law, Athelred, went and captured and burned Hastings' own fortress at Benfleet straight to the ground, while Hastings was out raiding. The next generation of commanders was flawlessly executing Alfred's mobile defense strategy. And the geographic genius of his fortress network completely flipped the script for the invaders. Think about it. In past decades, the River Thames was basically an open highway straight into the soft underbelly of southern England. But for Hastin in 893, it was an absolute nightmare. The Thames was now the most heavily fortified river in Britain, blocked by 6 fully armed burhs stretching all the way from London to Cricklade. These forts constantly shadowed his fleet, completely cutting off his supply lines and denying him any easy entry. The jaws of the trap finally snapped completely shut at Buddington. Chased all the way into the borderlands, Hastin was completely surrounded by a massive, combined army of West-Saxons, Mercians, and even Welshmen. And here is where Alfred's logistics truly shine. The English commanders didn't even need to risk a direct, bloody assault on the walls. They just waited outside. They literally starved the Vikings for weeks and weeks until a desperate, brutal breakout failed miserably. It was a crushing, absolute defeat for the invaders. Hastin's forces were outdone time and time again by the sheer strength of those burhs and the lightning speed of the organized army. When Hastin finally gave up and fled back to the continent in 896 with just 5 ships left, it proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Alfred's machine was flawless. From his rotating army and defensive fleets to his literacy reforms and diplomatic alliances, every single gear in this magnificent system worked perfectly together to crush the greatest Viking threat of the entire era. King Alfred died in 899, at the age of 50, leaving his realm completely secure in the hands of the incredibly capable generation that he had personally trained. But as we look back at his remarkable legacy, we really have to ask ourselves, what makes a leader truly great in the face of total disaster? Is it personal courage, wielding a sword on a battlefield? Or is it the unmatched, visionary genius of an architect who can methodically rebuild an entire society from the ground up? Let that sink in the next time you face a major crisis of your own.